It had snowed for 6 days. Sick, slow flakes drifting like falling prayers, softening the bones of the prairie until even the fences looked like old ghosts. Wind scraped against the windows of Jedoriabon's ranch house. But inside the fire snapped in its stone mouth, and the lantern burned the way it always did, dim, golden, patient. Jed lit that lantern each evening. The same way he combed his horse's mane and carved names into the barn posts of cattle long dead. Not out of habit, out of loyalty, because once long ago someone had waited for him, and though that someone was now buried under a row of cottonwood crosses, his promise hadn't died with her. No one had crossed that stretch of land in weeks. The trail was lost under snow drifts and silence. Even the crows had moved south. So when he saw the shapes, two of them dark against the white, he first thought they were wolves. Then one stumbled. The elder of the two figures caught the other mid-fall. They were human, barefoot, bundled in what looked like deer hide and threadbare shawls. Jed didn't move from the porch, just watched the lantern swaying in the wind beside him. The flame inside it made their eyes flicker like startled deer. They didn't speak, just stood at the edge of the barnyard, unsure. Jed raised his hand, not his invitation, not quite, but not refusal either. A slow gesture, small as a breath. Enough. The older one nodded, cautious, and guided the younger girl forward. He opened the barn door. They walked in. He didn't follow right away. He stood in the snow and felt it soak through the soles of his boots, staring into the shadows behind them, as if some third figure might appear, someone chasing, someone claiming. But there was nothing, only wind and a silence so old it felt sacred. Inside the barn, the scent of wet hide, straw, and with smoke mingled. The girls huddled beside the cow, who shifted but didn't protest. Jed sat down a tin cup of coffee by either stallpost, said nothing. He wasn't sure if they spoke English. The older one took it. Her hands were red and chapped. A faint scar cut through her bottom lip, pale against her dark skin. Her eyes didn't plead. They jithed. She didn't thank him, but she didn't spill the coffee either. When he turned to leave, the younger girl, barely more than a child, whispered something in a tongue he didn't understand. The older girl didn't translate. Back in the house, he left the door unlatched. That night, he didn't sleep, just sat in the rocker by the fire, whittling an old cedar stick down to nothing. Outside, the snow swallowed every sound. But he couldn't stop hearing that whisper. By down, the girls were on the porch. He opened the door before they knocked. They looked half frozen, shivering with bowed heads. He pointed to the hearth. They stepped inside. It took 3 hours for their hands to stop trembling. The younger one, he saw now, walked with a limp. The older girl let her take the only chair and sat cross-legged on the floor. Jed boiled beans and gave him what bread he had. The girls ate with careful hands, grateful, but controlled, not desperate. He still didn't ask questions. The sun rose and set again. On the second morning, the younger girl's fever broke. Jed left water in a basin on the porch. When he returned from chopping wood, the older girl had already washed her sister's hair and hung the cloths to dry. He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, watching. She met his gaze for the first time, not with fear. She stood, walked over, and said her first word. Chenoa. He blinked. My sister, she said, pointing toward the girl. Tisa. A native. Jeff. She paused. Jeff. The word didn't fit in her mouth. Not Kite. She tried again. Jedadia. That she got right later when he saddled the mare to ride into town for supplies. Chenoa followed him halfway to the gate. Snow had started again. Seen flakes that curled like lace on her dark braid. You come back, she asked. He looked at her, hard-eyed, unreadable, and nodded once. He light the lantern every night. She tilted her head. Why? He said nothing, just rode off. The general store was colder than the prairie. Not by temperature, but by talk. Clovis Hatch, the blacksmith, leaned in when Jed passed him. Do you know who they are? Jed said nothing. Clovis spat a wet glob onto the plank floor. Comanche, y de bit. Raneguas or traded girls. Dangerous either way. Jed paid for flour, salt, dried meat, and a tin of cherry tobacco. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. "You expect company, Bon?" Jed shrugged. "Depends how long the snow holds." Back home, Chenoa met him at the gate again. She didn't ask about the tobacco, but she tucked it into the cupboard like it was sacred. That evening, Jed walked out to the porch to find the curtain in the main room had been sewn. Not replaced, just mended, stitches tight, even done by someone who once knew comfort and wanted to remember it. He didn't say a word, but he left his late wife's old scarf on the peg beside the door. Blue, worn, and worn. The next morning, Chenoa wore it. She stirred beans while he chopped wood. Tisa read from a torn-up primer Jed didn't remember owning. The house felt less empty. He found himself lingering near the table just to hear the sound of breath, not his own. That night Chenoa stepped outside after Tisa fell asleep. Snow hissed against the shingles. She stood on the porch letting it kiss her bare shoulders. The scarf still clung to her like memory. Jed joined her without a word. "You quiet," she said. "So are you." She nodded, then said, "This safe place." He hesitated. "It's not far from the world, but yes, safer than most." Chenoa turned toward him. "You alone long time." 12 winters. She exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cold. "I remember fire in our old house. Smell of deer stew. Mother used to sing." Her voice faltered. Then Trey came. "Not deer. Girls." Jed didn't move. "My uncle traded us for bullets." Jed looked away. "But you didn't ask," she said. "Didn't they look? They seen too much to stare." She touched his hand just barely. "Do you think we stay?" He didn't answer. Not in words. But he left the door unlatched again. 3 days passed. On the 4th, the sheriff rode in. Jed was mending a gatepost. Chenoa stepped onto the porch. Sheriff Arland Crowley wasn't cruel, but he wasn't soft either. "Tom's uneasy," he said, dismounting. "Says you're keeping Comanche girls." Jed didn't blink. "They re not prisoners. They re guests." Crowley looked at Chenoa. "You claiming her?" Jed paused. "Then, I ain't sending her out into that." "That's not what I asked." Jed's jaw flexed. "Says man." The sheriff studied him, then nodded. "Then make official. Before Clovis gets clever," he rode off. Jed turned back to Chenoa. She stepped down from the porch, stood in front of him. "Your law says marry." "It does." Chenoa reached up, untied the blue scarf, and held it out. "Then you give this to me again like man gives a gift." Jed took the scarf slowly, tied it around her neck with trembling fingers. They didn't speak of love, but in that gesture, quiet, beater worn, un second, it lived. That night, he lit the lantern as always, but this time he watched a glow against the window with someone beside him. Chenoa leaned her head on his shoulder. Tisa slept under a quilt, and the wind for the first time in years didn't sound like sorrow. It sounded like a hymn. If this story stirred something in your heart, don't let fade into silence. Tap the like button so others may find the lantern still burning. Subscribe to ride deeper into tales of forgotten love, quiet redemption, and second chances. Comment below. Have you ever kept a light on hoping someone would return? And remember, sometimes the softest stories leave the loudest echoes. More Wild West soul stories coming soon. Be part of the Firelight Circle.